Okay, welcome back to keynote number 2. So we're going to talk, does everybody know about LinkedIn? Do you know about LinkedIn? So the managing director of Europe, LinkedIn, is Kevin Eyres. I was an early user of LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn almost every day. So LinkedIn is a very key business tool. And Kevin is going to talk about how all the social aspects of recruiting, the social aspects of business can be used using tools like LinkedIn. I assume Kevin knows that LinkedIn isn't the only social tool. I think there's something called Zing, if we know Europe. But LinkedIn is all happening. It's very coolio. And Kevin's here. And what's very interesting is that I just found out something. See, this is the reason why you want to be an MC, so you can find out secret information that you never knew before. Do you know that there's a separate interface for LinkedIn for corporate recruiters? And that they pay LinkedIn buku bucks, that's how we say it in English, buku bucks, to have access to this special interface. So somebody calls you up from, well, I guess they're not calling you up from Lehman Brothers anymore, but some company that's still in business, Fortis. And Fortis calls you up and says, I saw you on LinkedIn. It's because they're using Kevin's new interface. So Kevin, come on up. Welcome to Eyres E-Day. And let's listen to Kevin, Managing Director of LinkedIn Europe.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's a great intro, by the way. I love the dance, too.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I've got a real dilemma here because I'm trying to figure out which direction do I face. And I've never presented. Oh, there you go. So over here. I've never presented to an audience where I'm offending half of the people all the time. So it's like I'll try to move back and forth here. So as Mark said, what I'm going to talk about is how social technologies are changing business. And it's really based on 3 fundamental aspects. One is your identity as a professional, and going with that is your reputation. The other aspect of that is we have a concept of every individual is a small business, right? You're an entrepreneur, and the way to manage your career is to think of yourself as a small business and to be an entrepreneur. And when you come up with those ideas about this is how I can get ahead in my career, this is how I can do my job better, then be proactive and act on those. And then the other aspect is collaboration. And collaboration through individuals and also collaboration how it benefits companies as well. So those are the key aspects of things I'm going to talk about through this next few minutes here. To start off with, though, what I want to do is talk about, this is cool, the presentation doesn't quite fit, but we'll look at the major fundamental shifts that are happening. And Thomas Malone, an MIT professor, he has some different theories about the shift that's happening is because, there's actually another word ahead of that, it's driven by the cost of communications coming down and the ability for people to communicate, right? And if we look at this of the evolution of communication, then you can start to understand how this is really impacting business and how social technologies are really accelerating this communication. So if you think back, thousands of years ago, then we really had no other forms of communication other than verbal communication amongst each other. But what's happening now is we can communicate much better, and our realm is just beyond the people that we are speaking to because of communication. And then that led us to broadcasting. But then it was one person was doing all the talking, one person was, or a few people were communicating all the ideas, and masses of people were listening. So there was not a two-way communication, it was really just a one-way communication. With the advent of the internet, it took us a little while, but then we started to figure out that with this new technology, and we call it the 2.0 web, then people are interconnected together. So as we're interconnected, we can now have a dialogue between one-to-one, one-to-many, and basically all of us are connected together. And because all of us are connected together, this is what's really unleashing all of the collaboration. As we're connected together, there's also some challenges around that because now it's very easy to discover things about people, and so you have to be careful about how you manage your reputation in this kind of an environment. So if we think about 2002, so here were some of the big companies in 2002, still big companies today, And this is when Reid Hoffman, excuse me, started LinkedIn. We actually officially launched in 2003, but he came up with the whole concept and was thinking about, I'm an entrepreneur. For those of you who have heard about Reid Hoffman, he was one of the co-founders of PayPal, angel investor in Facebook, and in Dig and in Flickr and all kinds of other very successful companies. Typically it started out of Silicon Valley. And he understood the value of networking and the value of when you have an idea, then you want to make sure that you socialize that as quickly as possible because you want to vet that idea, find out where the challenges are, find out where the opportunities are as quickly as you possibly can, and then if it's a great idea, move on. If it's not, move off to that and then figure out something else. So it was about speed and rapid communication. And through this social technologies, LinkedIn, Facebook, Hives, the rest of them, then it's really disrupting a couple of different areas. And mainly what it's disrupting is entertainment and also in business. I'm going to focus mainly on business, and we'll start talking about these three themes. Now, so we look at LinkedIn, this is the vision of the company. It's quite simple. It's connecting the world's professionals. And what do we do with that? It's to make them more productive and successful as individuals and also out of companies. And the great things is that when individuals become more successful in their careers, then so do the companies. And there's great knock-on effects around that as well. Right? Thomas Friedman. How many of you have heard of Thomas Friedman? He's just a brilliant author. He's got great programs. And he's starting to look at, and he's got many different theories. And one of the things that he's talking about is that now that people are able to collaborate in much more freely and in real time, then that puts us all on a much more equal footing. And what do we mean by that? It means that people now, if you have a great idea, then you're able to communicate with somebody from anywhere around the world. You're now judged on, what is your value, what's your knowledge, what can you bring to the table, and so it's really leveling the playing field. And we're having, we get a lot of notes from people who have had success on LinkedIn and other sites. That's talking about how it's opened up a world of opportunities for them that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to find. But it starts off with some fundamental pieces, which is you have to have your online reputation. So let's start talking about some of these concepts. So that was just kind of the background on things. So every individual is an entrepreneur. So to kind of get a better grip on that, let's think about, well, what does that mean? So if we think of ourselves as a company, then we all understand that there's certain value in companies, and so why do we think that you need to be an entrepreneurial, or you need to have an entrepreneurial spirit to manage your career? And one of the things that we're seeing is that careers are people are managing them much more proactively, but the job cycle is becoming much more quickly. So people are changing jobs much more frequently. So show of hand, how many of you who have been in the job market for, or been in your career for at least 5 years, have been or had only one job? So have you only had one job all of your career? Right? So very few. So how many have had more than 5 positions in your career? Okay. So the thing is that what we're seeing is that the job cycle is actually is cycling very, very quickly. So 10 years going down. There's also an increase in competition amongst companies looking for great talent. Right? That's another thing that we're seeing. And then we see even in countries like Japan, where the old concept of a job for life, that's essentially going away. And what we're seeing is that in this statistic here, it's showing that students today will have 10 to 14 jobs by the time they're 38 years old. So really the way to manage that is to be proactive. And so our concept around every individual is an entrepreneur, think of yourself as a small company, then we can kind of put this into a concept of, if you think of yourself as the company, then what types of things do we need to think about when you're looking at a company? You need to manage your brand, your revenue, what's your unique selling proposition, business listings. You want to make sure that that people can find you and that you have a showcase for your business. And you also need to have staff. You need to have experts in R&D and marketing and finance or other different areas because you can't do everything yourself. And so if we take this same concept that we all understand about a business needs to have all of these different things, and we apply them to an individual, then you can start to see how you can draw some correlations and how social networking can help you manage your own career by using some fundamental business concepts. So if we think about a brand, right, and this is Fast Company, they said the brand called you. You know, they were looking at this, many, many years ago, and they said that, your brand is really your name and it's your reputation. All right, so that's one of the important things. Your revenue, think about it as your salary. Everybody always wants to earn a little bit more money. Your USP, it's your skills, it's your experience. So what do you bring to the table? What knowledge do you have? Your business listing, just like you would list yourself on Google and have advertising there, your listing is really your online identity, your professional identity. The question is, which identity do you want to have? Do you want to have your social identity or your professional identity? And you want to make sure that those two are at least somewhat congruent. We've got some examples on how it cannot be congruent. And as far as your R&D and the other kind of functional roles, you want to have expertise. That's your network. And this is where professional networking really starts coming alive. It's the collaboration aspect. It's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's actually who and what they know. Because it's the network of individuals who are going to be able to get you ahead and make those decisions about opportunities or challenges much more quickly. So let's think about business listings, your brand, what happens here. So typically, if you're on LinkedIn and you Google yourself, and how many of you have actually looked yourself up online? Honestly, right? It's typically everybody, and then other people not willing to admit it. But look at yourself, because other people are looking for you, right? How many of you have looked at other people online through Google, right? Pretty much everybody has. And so one of the things is, as a brand, you want to make sure, and this is what SEO is all about, is companies want to make sure that they're top in the rankings. Because we all know it's like people don't dig too far down the results. So typically, if you have a profile on LinkedIn, and you make that profile public, then you'll show up as #1 on Google. Some of the only sites that usually top us are Wikipedia. So typically, LinkedIn profile, you want to make sure that you are known from a business standpoint. This is how you can showcase yourself. An example of, we actually took out the name to help on the privacy here. This is a real example of a real estate agent in San Francisco, our PR and communications director in California, used her several different times, and then she recently joined LinkedIn. She was looking for a new house, used her again, looked her up on Google because she wanted to inform her about what was being said about her. There was one result about this woman. A real estate agent typically gets business through referrals. Well, the only thing up here, and you can't really see this because the screens aren't so great, it's 2 really, really negative comments about the person, about her being rude, she didn't follow through, customer service was terrible. Well, the thing is she had no other communication about herself, and so if she had managed her online reputation, then at least interspersed with this would be comments about herself. She could have recommendations from other people who have used her, because the person that brought this to our attention said she was actually really good. So it's about looking at and managing your online reputation. Some other examples, we talked about how you want to make sure from a social standpoint and a professional standpoint, then you don't have 2 completely identities or different identities. Here's some examples of when I was hiring for, again, a PR director for Europe. This is somebody that really needs to understand how communication works, right, and what their reputation is like. These are some examples, and I've taken the names out of them, but their favorite quote is, "If first you don't succeed, cheat." All right? Another one is, "Your favorite drug is cocaine." Another one was, worked as a high-class escort from this time to this time. All very tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, do you really want this to be publicly available to everybody? And I found this because I was doing reference checks, right? And I wanted to find out, well, what do they say about themselves in other sites? And so this is one of the ways that a lot of companies are doing this now. And in fact, actually, just last week, a reporter asked Barack Obama, said, "What advice would you give to youth?" It's a very broad question. You know what his answer was? Be careful of what you post on Facebook. That was his answer, which we thought that was a great answer. But again, it's really highlighting the importance of managing your online reputation. The other aspect of social networking, and this is not just from a professional standpoint, it's really the whole social technologies, is, you know, we live in this world of absolute information overload. And what social technology, social media helps with is how do you move from information to insight? And some of the things that we've done on LinkedIn, there's other sites that do this as well, is, you know, you get this raft of, you know, there's blogs, there's, you know, all kinds of articles that are posted, there's group discussions, and you take all of this information and start segmenting it down to say, well, what do people in your industry have to say? What do your peers have to say? Or what are they looking at? What are they most focused on? And then you can isolate that down to say, well, what are they actually talking about? So how are people within your industry, within your network, what are they posting on a blog? What are they communicating about on a group? And because you're connected to them, you can actually start to see this. And you can filter down to say that, you know, industry experts and then the thought leaders. So again, another component of social networking and how it's changing the way we communicate and exchange information is taking all of this information and turning it into insight, because you're filtering based on who is in your network and who you're listening to, which is one of the reasons why, as you're managing your professional reputation and your online profile, you also want to make sure that you manage the people that you're connecting to in a thoughtful way as well. You can leave it up to you about how thoughtful or what that means. Some people like to connect to anybody and everybody. Other people like to make sure that that's a much smaller group so that you can get the insights much easier. Okay? Now, another aspect, so we haven't really talked about collaboration. It's been mainly focused on online reputation and thinking of yourself as a small business. So let's look at what other aspects of social technology have to play, and that's you know, this whole point around collaboration. And so this is a dilemma that people have, is I can do something very quick, but sometimes it leads to mistakes. You want to make sure you get the right information in place. But if I take too long to research and research and research to be absolutely certain, then, you know, maybe the opportunity has passed you by, and so it can take too long. So collaboration through social technologies, this is one of you know, the great benefits that you have, is you can start to post questions and proactively reach out to other people and find out, well, what are they saying about this? Somebody else who has expertise, then I can very quickly go to them, ask them for their opinion, make an informed decision, and move on very quickly. We've got a lot of examples of this. I mean, there was actually one, this probably doesn't happen so much anymore in this climate, but somebody from a private equity company in the Boston area, they were looking to make a new investment in India. They didn't have a lot of expertise in the particular field, so they used LinkedIn to find different people that had expertise. They ended up making an investment in a company, and then in a period of about 9 months, they ended up reselling the company for about 4x of what they originally purchased the asset for. And that was about, and they wrote to us, and many people will do this, and they say it was because of the knowledge that they got from somebody that they found through their network, through LinkedIn, that they were able to make a very rapid choice because they had information about the decisions they needed to make. Right? So if we think about this, you know, now people are starting to collaborate, then what's the challenge to companies? What's the opportunity for companies, and why would you want to do this? And so if we look at this, it's like, you know, we say that companies are becoming more open and transparent. That's true, and the reason why is, you know, let's say you work at a small company, then, you know, typically there's going to be more informed experts outside of your company than inside your company, right? So we understand that with a small company, you'd expect things like that. But let's say, you know, a big company, you know, 5,000, 100,000 people, you know, a company like Philips, you know, with employees all around the world, surely, you know, this doesn't apply to them, but actually it does. There's more smart, informed, knowledgeable experts outside of the company than inside the company. It's just the law of large numbers, right? And so the advantage that you get by companies opening up and encouraging people to communicate is that you can get this breadth of information internally. You can also communicate internally within companies, and we're helping many companies out as well. And so we're seeing, the great thing about this is you not only get information, about decisions you need to make, you can also talk to other customers, to partners, to employees, and even recruiters. I mean, let's face it, we know that people move from job to job. So from a company standpoint, the best way in order to retain employees is to have them, create a great environment for them to work in, an inspiring environment for them to work in, and a challenging environment, in a positive way for them to work in. So we think, yes, you are going to be found by recruiters or other people looking to move you from one company to another, but that's all part of the job market today, and it's important for companies to understand these different aspects. And so as we talk about collaboration within the company, then you start thinking about, well, Enterprise 2.0. And really Enterprise 2.0 is just a fancy way of saying this is how companies can benefit from collaboration. That's really all it is. They take the same thing that you've been doing on social networks or professional networks and apply that to the business world. Right? So one of the challenges that comes up is, how much do I open up? How much do I allow the employees to communicate with people about the work that they're doing? So an example of this is, I'm going to date myself on this, but in the late 80s, early 90s, I was working at Compaq Computers. And we had email internally, but nobody had external email addresses. And you had to go through all kinds of authorization, go through your VP, to finally get an okay that you could have an email address that somebody could contact you outside of the company. Because they were worried, it's like, well, if people have email and they're able to communicate outside of the company, everybody knows what's going to happen. Right? I mean, all of our trade secrets are going to go away. They're going to give away all the information. That'll just be total chaos. Now you think about that and you think, well, it's absolutely crazy. You couldn't survive without email in your company externally. Right? That's the way we do business. And we're at the point right now where, while CIOs, some of them are nervous about collaboration outside of the firewall, then many of the innovative companies are actively encouraging that because they understand this concept of there's more knowledge outside of your company than inside of your company, right? If you look at some of the authors here, they've written different books about, what's the sustainable edge. The sustainable edge is collaboration outside of your company. Right? Cisco Systems also understands this. What they've done is they actually created an RFP, and they acknowledge openly to say, we want to know more information from other people. So here's an open RFP, and we know that the next generations of social networks are going to have a positive impact on business. Help us understand that so they can start to build their strategy around that. Interesting enough, they're using more of social technologies in order to solicit feedback on how to best use social technologies. That's a smart thing to do. At IBM, they're also doing many things. We've actually done a deal with IBM where we're integrating LinkedIn and Lotus Notes, Lotus Live all together, so you can start to have a better collaboration with your day-to-day productivity tools. They also have guidelines on how to use social technologies inside or as an employee. And what they recognize is that, they call themselves IBMers, which is quite trendy, is that when you use these social networks or professional networks, then you're also representing the company, right? So be respectful of that and be mindful of that, and they're also understanding that how can they leverage that. And one of the ways they can leverage that is by ensuring that people are talking about IBM in a respectful way. They also see that it's a way to interact with their customers as well. So you can see that collaboration in a professional sense also helps the company. Forrester Research has talked about this in quite a good way, and they talk about it's a very natural bridge. So many times companies are somewhat nameless, faceless entities that create some kind of products or services, and they're seeing that now this is a way that they can become much more human. All right, so this is a way that companies can now start to have their employees interact with people that are actually creating the products or buying the products. And in fact, I'm going to skip ahead because I think we're running close on time, is, Microsoft created some advertising campaign with us, which was actually quite innovative. They looked at and they said, if we are going to be creating products for small businesses, then we want to make sure we get much closer to those businesses, those decision makers. Then we want them to see, well, who's behind the product. So they created an advertising campaign that they ran on LinkedIn. This was targeted just to small business owners. And it was, here's the guy who created the software. So Jacob was the lead developer on it. And the advertising actually had him. It was a personal note to small business owners talking about the new products they had that would help small businesses. And it was signed by the guy who helped create it all. And they linked it to his LinkedIn profile. So you could see this is the person that's behind creating the software. I can see what his experience is. I can see that this person has a lot of experience in software development. They've started their own company. They're an entrepreneur as well. So they've kind of been like you. So this developer who helped create all this software for you as a small business owner, then he's actually been in your shoes as well. And it was a highly effective campaign, and it enabled Microsoft to get closer to the customers they were trying to interact with. So this is a really innovative way that, again, Microsoft is starting to have a more human face and connect with the people that they're trying to do business with by having their employees on a site like LinkedIn. So again, you can see more about them. The other way that we think about, so this kind of, some of the ways we think about collaboration. Other ways is just, very basic components of I'm seeking advice. So it's an open question about, I would like to understand how to better use social technologies for B2B. And here's an example of somebody who's posted a question, and there's some very thoughtful answers about that. And the great thing is that this collaboration happens typically with no exchange of money. It happens because it's trading on goodwill, right? It's the same reason why, why is Wikipedia so successful and so good from a quality standpoint is people are willing to freely give them themselves in order to help other people because they realize that by helping somebody else, when they need some help, it's basically kind of paying it forward. So this is how we can help others, and then in return, others will help me. So in review, what I'm going to do is just very quickly highlight. So what did we talk about? So we talked about how social technologies are changing the way that people work, and it's really through online identity. It's through manage your online reputation. It's through collaboration via individuals or companies. And it's also about this mindset change, which is, I am my own company. I'm going to take control of my own destiny, my own career, and think of myself, apply these business rules to myself. So I'm going to think about my brand. I'm going to think about my network. And I think that's, what we're seeing is that this is making people much more productive, and a result, much more successful in their companies and within their careers. And the biggest piece is, it's getting involved. And one of the things that it's great to see, from a LinkedIn standpoint, coming to the Netherlands is that the Netherlands is our most engaged country in the entire world. So there is more interaction and engagement that happens on LinkedIn from the Netherlands than anywhere else. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to be here and excited that we're going to be opening an office very soon. We're interviewing employees or prospective employees right now. Is it because you guys really get it? You absolutely get it. And I think the Netherlands is really going to be at the forefront of showing the rest of the world how interconnected professionals can not only get ahead in their careers, but also advance technology and the pace of innovation in companies. So again, very happy to be here. Thank you guys very much for listening. And we've got a Q&A session later on in the day as well.
All right. Thank you. All right, here we go. I got a few questions for you.
Okay.
I've been around since the beginning of this social thing, and very often people would get very confused. Mm-hmm. They get a request to say, I want to be your friend. But this person isn't their friend. Mm-hmm. Right? They're a stranger. And in the professional world, this is especially acute. In the early days of LinkedIn, really the only thing LinkedIn did was allow you to meet someone through levels of connection.
Right.
Obviously nowadays it's more. But we have still this conflict of, is this person my friend? They're part of my network. For instance, I get in my inbox what I consider spam from people who are looking for a particular person, right? And I know that on Facebook, if I get this kind of spam, I will defriend the person, say, I don't want you to be my friend. But on LinkedIn, I think I'm a little more tolerant, right? Because after all, this person's looking for a job. It's not their fault. The fact that they spam me, they probably don't realize I'm so sensitive, you know? But how do you resolve this conflict? And when people, I'm sure today, still say to you, this person's asking me to be their friend. Well, they're not my friend.
Right.
So how do you resolve all that? I mean, this is just part of the game?
No, I think it's part of the game. I think it's part of understanding what are the social norms, right? So, I mean, when...
do you guys publish policies and procedures or suggestions?
We do. We have best practices. So if you go to the site, then there's learn.linkedin.com. Then there's best practices. Guy Kawasaki, who has nothing to do with LinkedIn, but he's created some really good tips on how to use LinkedIn in the most effective way. And one of the things that he says, which we also agree with as well, is you want to connect to the people that you know, that you trust, and that you value. Right? So that's a wide statement to make. You may value connecting to anybody and everybody. We think it's best that you connect to people that you really do know, and that you would actively answer questions or help them out. So it's going to be a smaller community. And the way I deal with that is if I meet somebody and they say, hey, I'd like to connect to you, and we maybe shook hands and talked for about 5 minutes, then I would just let them know. It's like, here's the way I manage my connections.
Okay, so now let me bring up another thing that's, again, part of my life. As I go off and do business, it's clear to me when I meet a person who works for a large company, whether they are more concerned with their own career versus what's best for the company. Okay? And this is true in business or the military or wherever. I run into this all the time. In the U.S., we call this CYA. You know what that means?
I know what that means.
Want to tell them what that means?
I can tell them what it means.
Cover your ass. All right, that means that at the end of the day, that person you're communicating with, they're more concerned with their own career than what's best for the company. So this is the problem with these individual people moving around very quickly, worrying about their own careers, versus what's best for the deal, for the particular situation. So what do you think about that?
Was there a question in there?
It pisses me off. It pisses me off. And I don't want anybody here to be putting themselves ahead of their company. Because the company's paying their salary. It's about business. We're trying to get work done, not cover your ass. That's not what it's about. It's not about your career. It's about the deal and the contract and the work we're trying to do. Does that make any sense?
That makes sense. I think there's always a balance with things as well,
All
right? So I mean, you absolutely want to make sure that you put the company up as a higher priority if you're trying to get a deal done.
Like work.
Yeah,
like
at work.
The job.
Yeah, the job.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's also a natural balance of, I'm not going to be in a job forever, so you're also going to have to look out for yourself.
Right.
I think everybody needs to strike the right balance.
Half the time when I'm talking to a product manager and he'll say something like, well, this is off the record, that's code for I really want to work for you later. Right? So I know my boss is an idiot, but off the record he's an idiot, and that means I want to work for you later, right? I mean, that's, right?
Your interpretation.
Okay, all right. Now, third question, final question. Quick history. I was the guy who asked Reid Hoffman for faces in LinkedIn. In the early days, it was a no face, right?
Yep.
And I really thought that if you can have social software, Amy remembers what I'm talking about. LinkedIn did not have a face, and that was very unusual to me. So I said, Reid, put the face in, okay? Now, later on, LinkedIn had the ability to export your contact list, I think today still, in a .csv format, okay? Now, you brought up the terms open and transparent,
right?
And you brought up a great example of Microsoft using LinkedIn, so they're all leveraging you, and we're in a distributed world. Do you know the question I'm going to ask you, dude? Okay. We need
No idea from
APIs.
you.
We need APIs into and out of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So my customers don't have to download a CSV file. So when they want to go import it into Zing or wherever, okay, it could be easier. And so Facebook, MySpace, everyone now is providing various mechanisms to do that. Guess what company doesn't do that?
I don't know, because
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn does.
All right. Dude.
Developers.linkedin.com. There's a whole API
Okay,
section.
I'm going to call you on that, dude. I'm going
I
to call
know.
you back
All right.
next year here, all right, because I don't believe that's true, okay? And I've yelled about this to everybody. Everyone
Yeah.
knows I'm not being prejudiced on you. I do this on everybody, right? We
All
need
right.
open APIs to create a distributed web so we all can move our data around. Data portability, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And we love LinkedIn. All right,
Good.
we just want you to be part of our distributed world of the
Good.
future. Thank you very much, ladies. All right,
Good.
and gentlemen. So,
Good.
another break. Come back, 15 minutes for Robert Rice.